Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to next episode of EFKA's Talk at 5 o'clock. And today I have a very special guest that he's very dear to my heart. His name is Vince, and we met, Vince, what it was, like several years ago.
2001.
And I think you found me first, and I ignored you, and then you found me again. And later on, the rest is history. I was the guest of his podcast, and we became friends ever since. But what's fascinating in Vince, and I really want him to dive into his story, how he found his business and how it inspired him to find his path to a great success and without betraying his core values. And Vince, so tell us a little bit about yourself and how you endeavored your career journey and your business journey.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to address the first thing you said and how I found you and then found you again, because I believe I'm responsible to own the relationships. So in business,
Awesome.
right? Like you have to own the relationship. So you got to follow through on that kind of stuff. Yeah. I mean, as far as finding the business and telling you kind of transparently how that came about. So I'll give you my career in 90 seconds, basically. But, started off my career, graduated college, fell into recruiting like I think most recruiters do. Didn't know about the industry. Right out of college, got hired, worked hard, liked the industry. Very positive industry, right? You're giving people jobs. Every once in a while, there's negatives to it. But, for the most part, it's a feel-good industry. And so I really enjoyed it. Actually pivoted my career to commercial real estate development into the Great Recession, which took me out of commercial real estate development and back into recruiting. And I was running global talent acquisition for an education technology company. And the company was purchased by a Chinese company, and they moved the headquarters to Seattle, and there was all this executive changeover. And I would work with the recruiters that were recruiting executives for us. And they weren't doing anything different than I was doing. Right? It was my observation. But their fees were way bigger. Right? So I'd go home and tell my wife, I was like, hey, can you believe we're paying $180,000 to get this person? I was like, in Singapore. And I told my boss, I was like, you give me the 180K, I'll go to Singapore and I'll bring the person back with me. Right? Let's go get them. So she's like, why aren't you in that business? I was like, I don't know. I didn't grow up in it. And it didn't happen right away. So that was probably 5 years before the business really started. And I was working with a coach. I was just kind of at the point where I felt like I needed a coach. I needed to grow, right? I wanted to continue to learn, to continue to grow. And we were really hitting purpose, the conversation of purpose. Actually just did a blog on the 4Ps of the executive career, which is basically the process that I went through that launched this business. And it started with purpose and trying to identify my purpose and what would that really be. And I started dialoguing, I had a notebook and I started taking notes, right? And this kind of, the idea was for it to free flow, and started taking notes. And I landed pretty quick on being an entrepreneur again and going into executive search, but then how that was going to look and how that was going to work and what type of business it was going to be and all those kinds of things wasn't very quick. And I was just dialoguing about that. And I couldn't figure out a name, right? So I wasn't like, when something feels right and you just, whether it's inspired, an inspired thought, an inspired activity, it wasn't that. I just wasn't getting there. And it was during COVID, and so I'm in Atlanta. And so Georgia, like we did the flattening of the curve, which 2 weeks was like 2 months, and then kind of opened again and then closed again and then opened again, right? Pretty early. But it was during that first kind of reopening. It was in May, and it was 2020. And I was with my son, with one of his friends, and they were getting Chick-fil-A at the mall. It was the only restaurant open in the mall food court. And we're sitting there, and it was just an inspired moment. It was like, I need to call this business Renee Vincent, and my wife is Renee. I was like, and I need Renee to do it with me, and we'll do it together. And she'll be great at this. And so I went home and shared that story with my wife, and she was like, yeah, sounds good. And one of the funny things, I think the closer was, for her 50th birthday, she's like, I want to get a Rolex. I was like, what? I was like, use your phone like everybody else in America does, right? To tell time. And at that time, I wasn't even really wearing a watch as well. But then, right in the beginning of 2020, right, kind of right before COVID hit, my father had passed away, and he left me his Rolex. So now I started wearing a Rolex, and she's like, so first thing she's like, well, I had to get my Rolex then. And I was like, that's a great idea. The first deal you do, take that money and go buy whatever Rolex you want to get, right? Like that. I think that's a great idea. And she did. It wasn't quite that fast, and finding the one and all that kind of stuff took a while. But but within the first 9 months of us being in business, she had got herself a Rolex. So it was kind of fun that way. And so it was really about like developing. And I guess I'll just touch on these 4 Ps if that's okay. Is that okay?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So finding purpose, right, and just kind of figuring out what you want to do. And that means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, right? So if there's people of faith that listen to this, right, I believe that everything we have is designed with purpose, right? Like our computers we're using right now was designed by a product team for specific purposes, right? Now I could take this computer and wedge it underneath my door and use it as a doorstop, and it would work perfectly fine as a doorstop, but I would not be using it for the purpose it was designed. And the object doesn't create its own purpose. The designer creates the purpose. So if you're a person of faith, right? So God has given us purpose, and that's a journey to kind of figure out what that means. But if you're not a person of faith, you still want to find your purpose and what you want to do, and use your gifts and your talents to have enjoyment and drive your career and those kinds of things. So that was really kind of that initial exercise, right? It is just kind of figuring out, hey, what do I want to do? What am I kind of gifted towards? What do I enjoy? And, how does that make me feel? Am I giving back? And those types of things. And then the kind of the next P is potential. So it's like, hey, what's the potential? What is the potential inside of us? Like, where can we take the business? Where what potential we have? So kind of right. I would say from a worldly perspective, right? You've got all these different potentials. There's different assessments you can take to figure out like, hey, what you're good at, strength finders, the predictive index, Colby, right? It kind of goes on and on and on, right? All these different assessments you can take to kind of figure out, hey, what am I good at? What's my potential? Where do I like operating? And kind of figure out, what that means. Now, hitting the faith side of it, I would say that if you're on purpose, if you're
Mm-hmm.
working at purpose, everything that you need to accomplish that's already in you, right? That'd be God's perfect plan for you, because then if you're doing your purpose, everything just kind of opens up for you, and you could, because you've been designed for that, right? So but it's kind of that, hey, what's the potential? How do I grow? How do I continue learning? How do I do those things? And there's been a lot of that, right? Growth and learning the business and marketing and being a very small company, but being efficient, and how do you do those types of things? And then the next one was principles, right? Kind of your guardrails. I think I put this in my blog, but earlier in my career, I had an opportunity to support Title Max. Title Max is out of Savannah, Georgia. Are you familiar with Title Max? Do you know what Title Max is?
No, not really.
They basically give loans and title loans. So you give like the title of your car, right? So
Yeah.
you
Mm-hmm.
bring your car title into this
Yeah.
company, and they give you money based upon your title. The guy that owns it like has yachts and private planes and helicopters, and they're charging people like 100% interest annually, which seems like it should be completely illegal. I can't even understand how that's legal in the United States, right? That you could charge someone, they advertise they charge 10%. And as I was learning more about it, I was like, it's 10% per month they're charging. That's insane. So like I didn't, so that was outside of my comfort zone to support. I had a buddy of mine who was a really good recruiter who had the opportunity to become the recruiting director for, I think, Juul, the vape
Yes.
company.
Yeah. The vape company.
And he was asking me about it. I was like, you're asking me? That's a really personal question, right? Like, I would go to work for Jack Daniels, and Jack Daniels produces whiskey, and alcohol is dangerous and potentially, and I would have no issue of going to work for a distillery, but I wouldn't go to work for Juul, right? Like, I think they're killing people, right? So that's up to you. I'm not making that moral decision for you. That's what, the principles are, is laying guardrails. And so you lay guardrails around your career. I often tell the story. I met a woman, and we're kind of just going through career coaching, and like one of her must haves was, I have to live underwater. I was like, well, That's pretty good because that's not very limiting because almost every major city in the world is on water, right? So it's not eliminating a lot, right? And she did. She ended up getting a job and she got an apartment overlooking. She was in Chicago, so that's Lake Michigan. I think it's Lake Michigan when you're in Chicago. So she had a lake view of Lake Michigan, right, from her place. So she got her job on the water. So that's kind of, hey, those are your principles. So now you're setting up, okay, hey, what is it I'm going to do? And I would say, hey, you want to do that very, very specifically. Like when I did it for me, right, it was what are we going to go after? What's our niche? What's our value statement? Who's our target market? How do we find that target market? How do we connect to them? Everything is designed for that target market. So everything is very specific. So purpose, potential, principles, and then the fourth P is you got to have a plan, right? And I think that just goes down to at a very basic level, right? There's two types of people in the world, right? And time and change are always happening. And I was telling this to one of my daughters. I was like, she just kind of lives life as it comes. And I was like, you're heading somewhere. Everyone is heading somewhere, right? But if you're not in control of that, you're just, letting the world decide for you where it's taking you. And so time and change happen, right? We're all subject to time and change constantly. But if you have a plan, now you become the master of time and change. A good plan, like plan with dates and deliverables, and right. And so now you make change happen on your time schedule versus being subjective to time and change and always adjusting to time and change. And so those are the kind of the four P's that I went through really to figure out, hey, how do I do this? How do I do it in a manner of which aligns to my principles, aligns to what I love doing, what I feel like I could add a lot of value, and just and then trust, have faith. I would say have faith is the key.
And that's wonderful. You've shared those four principles, and they're quite simple, but they're not easy to do. And unfortunately, many people in the search of their career or the next chapter in life completely skip all the four P's or just go against or towards the biggest return on investment, what their neighbor said, what their other competitors are doing. And let me tell you this from the user perspective or client perspective. When I talked first to Vince, I instantly sensed something very, very different about him the way he talked, the way he presented himself. He knew what he was talking about. But not only that, I saw the spark in his eyes, the excitement, the passion, and that led to a long-term relationship that I didn't even anticipate because you bumped into the people over and over again throughout your career, but only few of them really stuck in your head for a long time, and you have this unforgettable experience of encounter, and keeps you wondering like what was so special about that encounter, what was so special about that person you randomly met on the either event or online or any other way. And usually I do believe I have this theory and you need to prove it. And you're the living proof of it, that these people who have these unforgettable experience in our life that we feel so drawn towards is that they have figured it out. There are four P's, whether through hard work or they intuitively lean into those. And that really resonates with a lot of people. And I believe that, for those who have not really followed their religious path to exploring the four P's and journey, but this is something that it's hidden in every single one of us. If we just tapped into those potentials, those inner voices that sits inside of us and make our light shine brighter when we just think or talk about it, these are the things that we need to pay attention for. These are the things that are going to make us a key differentiator in anything we do. And I believe that when you kind of nail down your business path, you stay true to your values, and you are also choosing the people who you would work with, people who do you provide services for. And that really spoke highly of your core values. So tell me how this whole started for you. And
Yeah, let me hit two things you said. One, you used the word principles, right? So principles are like laws, right? So what I'm always trying to figure out is just kind of how does the world work, right? Like I just want to make it easier, right? I'm not, my approach is very practical. Like I'm just trying to understand, right? It's like I just want to understand how it works. And but since they're principles, like they always work. So whether it's faith based or just your inner spirit or worldly based, you apply the principles and you get results from it. Secondly, I don't have it figured out. I'm working towards getting it figured out, right? But I don't have it figured out. I had a I've been sharing a story recently I took the bait, right? Now I'm saying to myself, it's like, don't take the bait. Don't get baited by the world. Unfortunately, my wife's family in the last 18 months, she's lost her parents. And we're getting older. And I'm the baby in my family, but my brother and sister are older than me. And like I'm talking to them about Social Security. So I can't believe I'm talking to my siblings about Social Security. It's like freaking me out. So I was like, hey, like, what are your plans? What are you doing? And then we met with like a financial planner, started talking about a retirement. And so I'm sharing this with my coach, and he's like, "Okay, well, explain to me, what success looks like for you when you retire." So I'm like, "Okay," so I'm laying out this dream scenario of traveling, condo in Italy, place here, you know, money to live, blah blah blah, right? And he's taking all these notes, and he knows that we have that restaurant investment, and so we talked about that, and we just had all these different conversations. And at the end of it, he's like, "Okay, so Vince, is your Social Security, is that 100% guaranteed that you're going to get to Social Security?" And I was like, "No." And he's like, "Well, what about your restaurant investments? Is that 100% guaranteed that that's going to work out?" And I was like, "No." This is like 2 weeks ago. And then like last week, the hurricane, literally, so the majority of the restaurants are on the I-4 corridor in Florida from Tampa to Daytona Beach. Hurricane's headed like right towards 40 of the restaurants. I'm thinking to myself, yeah, he jinxed me. Now all my restaurants are going to get destroyed. But anyway, so no, that's not guaranteed, right? And we're a very small percentage owner of those restaurants. I don't want to mislead the audience. Hey, is this guaranteed? Is that guaranteed? And everything he asked me, I was like, no, that's really not guaranteed. That's not guaranteed. And he's like, so what is guaranteed, right? And where he was taking me is that, hey, your guarantee is really the word of God. That's what we were talking about in that conversation. But I felt like, I've been meeting with this guy for 5 years, right? And I was like, you would think I would know better. This is the point where I don't have it all figured out, right? Because I totally took the bait and was like losing brain time and feeling anxious about how am I going to figure out in the next 10 years to get all these different things done to make this dream come true. And how is that really going to work? And, cash flow is always tighter than you expect it to be, and taxes are more than you expect it to be. And so just, all that was spinning in my head, and I just was losing, and I lost the fact that I was like, all I got to do is live the way I'm supposed to be living, right? And that stuff takes care of itself. It doesn't mean I don't work towards it happening. I do. Right? I'm not like, come if it comes, if it doesn't, it doesn't, right? I have a plan and
You
how to
still have to
market
put
it,
an
right?
effort
Right?
towards
Yeah.
it.
I work it. What I say is I am tenaciously patient, right? Because you don't know when it's going to break, but I work it hard, right? And working hard and knowing that it's going to happen, it always eventually does. So that's but yeah, so just I really don't quite have it figured out yet, right? I still like take the bait. I'm like, oh gosh.
But it all comes down to the believing in yourself. I did a little research through my own spiritual journey discoveries. And what I found, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think most of the religious or spiritual guides fundamentals teachings are related to believing in yourself and your inner powers that are given to you through the greater powers itself, but you always need to believe that you're capable of and you will be taken care of. If you start doubting yourself and you like trying to lean towards the material assets or bump yourself up, if you losing the sense of authenticity, your uniqueness, and you losing your trust within yourself, and without that pretty much nothing can be accomplished, or you only accomplish so little and you're always going to be in this worry of losing it all. But ultimately, if you think about our lives, we don't owe anything except for ourselves. Everything can be taken away at any given time. Our assets, our loved ones, our homes, our cars, our life savings can be wiped out within a second. The only thing that's truly yours, no one can take away from you, is yourself and your beliefs and your spirituality and your trust in that it's gonna work out if you put time and effort and believe whatever you believe in towards your future.
Yeah. You hit a lot of really great points there. And we just saw it. Like tomorrow's not guaranteed. Look at those poor people in North Carolina and just like the unexpected. I mean, those people weren't worried. You live in Asheville, North Carolina, you're not worried a hurricane is going to make your house float away, right? So I mean, very unexpected for those folks, and so nothing is really guaranteed. But to your point of problem solving, and this is, these are like lessons I try to teach my kids, and I try to keep things simple, right? So I was like, hey, can we like agree that human beings have dominion over planet Earth, that there's no other species on Earth? It's not like Planet of the Apes where we're battling apes for control of the planet, right? The human beings, only other human beings are really a threat to human beings, right?
That's
Of
true. It's
course you can get
unfortunate.
hurt, you can die, and there's all sorts of, your body is frail in many ways, but there's no species that we're worried about taking over the planet from us, and that everything we have, we pull out of the elements of the earth. So we, from the dirt, we everything. Our bodies, when it decomposes, like if a human body decomposes in the earth, there's nothing new to that earth. It's the same minerals that have always been there, right? Same elements that have always been there. So everything that's on the planet is of the planet, and humans manipulate it into electricity, nuclear power, rocket technology, video technology, streaming on computers, supercomputing, right? Artificial intelligence, robots, you name it. We pull from the earth and whatever we can think of, we accomplish. I often talk about Elon Musk with SpaceX, because SpaceX to me seems like that's like ridiculous. Who owns a rocket ship company, right? Like what a big vision that was for him to start talking to people about it and literally figure out how to, working with the right people who have experience, to figure out how to create SpaceX. It's like unbelievable, like, that what a big vision that was that he was able to achieve. Now, I saw the special on Netflix about Arnold Schwarzenegger. It was a 3-part special. And like the part one was about him becoming Mr. Universe, right? Coming from Austria, becoming Mr. Universe. And then the second episode was about him becoming the highest grossing actor in history, at least at that time, right? And then the third episode was about him becoming governor of California and taking on politics. And someone was talking about him. Was like, well, what Arnold has this ability to do is to tell you a story that when he tells it to you, you can see it in your mind's eye, right? And that must have been what like Elon Musk was doing, and what we have the ability to do. So yes, we can overcome, any ongoing challenge that we have as people, because we're designed to solve all of our problems here on Earth. We have dominion over this planet, right? So yeah, I think that's true, right? So if you could stay confident, Generation X, and I have Generation X kid. I mean,
Don't
Generation
age
Z.
yourself. Come
No,
on.
no, no. I'm about to say Generation Z. So I have several Generation Z children, and I teased one of my daughters, and I was like, you're the generation of how people identify, right? And so my joke to her is that I identify as a Jedi, right? Because I think it's easy to relate to what a Jedi is, but it's the confidence thing, right? Jedis are confident, right? Jedis are connected, right? So yes, you should be confident. You got to live fearlessly, without fear. Just live without fear. And I don't do that perfectly. I just was telling you the example. I started getting all worked up, fear about money, future, and I was getting freaked out about it. So I don't live 100% fearlessly, but it's something that I'm conscious about, that I should live fearlessly, right? And realize all the gifts we have. I have a son with cerebral palsy. He's turns 29 in a couple of weeks, so he's an adult. And that journey was a long journey of getting to kind of where I am today. And I think back and I said, man, I wish I was mature enough at a young age just to realize what a gift I was given, and to receive my son and his uniqueness as a gift versus as a struggle. And because I potentially saw it as a struggle, it was a struggle. It's still hard work, right? It's not like it's not easy. I didn't receive it initially. It was always like, why? Why did this happen? Why? Why us? Why him? Why this happened? And I just didn't receive him as the gift that he is. And I just wish I would have had, if I had that maturity 30 years ago, how much better life would have been over the last 30 years, right? So,
Vince, I remember you've shared me with this story, and we're probably going to cut this section out from the recording, quite honest with you. But it resonated and it touched me deeply, the story about your son. And not very many people know about this, about my story. I was born with the same diagnosis as your son, and it was a very lighter version of it. But it took in Soviet Union. There was no medicine, there was no nothing. And it almost led my parents to a divorce because they realized that there are years and years of overcoming struggles is going to be facing for an uncertainty that really shook their relationship. And my grandparents on the father's side really kind of felt sense of disappointment because they have a high expectation of their offsprings to be in a perfect shape and form. And the only person who had a very strong belief that this is not going to be the destiny that we're going to live, it was my mom. And I believe that the vision and the manifestation and the beliefs, she had, growing up in the Soviet Union where religion and church were unwelcomed, it's very hard to speak about spirituality and God's will publicly, at least. But my mom, she had a very strong belief that whatever it's thrown, it's the challenge for her and it can be overcome. And she put this manifestation and vision and beliefs and faith that she had inside of her towards my daughter's going to be perfectly fine. And for the first 2 years, she is the only one pretty much who fought vigorously to overcome through physical therapy, through all of the medication that possibly be to get me to where she was hoping me to be. And she really truly believed. She took me to different doctors, practitioners. We did the swimming. We did the walking on the rocks. It was painful. And no one really can tell anything nowadays. And I grew up perfectly normal. But that struggle that my mom went through, and doctors said it is impossible. It is impossible. But by the age of 8, I was clear of all diagnosis and no one can ever tell the difference. Only me and my mom remember those struggle moments that I remember of exaggerating exercises that I had to go through. And I know there's certain things still in me sits in there that I kind of trace back to those days, but I try not to forget and try to stay connected to that greater powers that help my mom to overcome the greatest fear of any mom could have, to have this struggle for, and actually for not for yourself, to see your child struggling with certain things that should have been given. But I think it made us stronger, closer, and that is the core fundamentals of my personal beliefs and values, that anything is possible. And I love that you referred to Arnold Schwarzenegger's story. He talks about in his interview, same actually as Oprah and many other influential people, that they, either it's through God, through belief, through spirituality, or through simple concept of manifestation, they envision things that they desperately want or so much want in their lives, that it almost feels real. And once it starts real, it actually starts happening in a real world. So there's, either people who follow the religion or they're not there. There's a greater power within us, within our minds and visualizations that can help us to get what we really, really want.
yeah, you speak it. You speak it. You do speak things into existence. I've read this. When I say I read, it means I listened to an audiobook. I listened to an audiobook. I had gotten the audiobook Think and Grow Rich, right? And I was like, that was like a New York Times bestseller. I didn't know it was like written in like 1933. So it was like written like during the Great Depression. And it was very good. But when I had gotten that book, right, Audible gave me the recommendation of The Science of Growing Rich. And it was just a couple bucks, so I got that one too. And that one was really interesting because it talks a lot about when people, and I absolutely believe that we manifest things, right? Just like Elon Musk manifested SpaceX, right? So when you give things words, and in that book it talked about that. It's like, and in the Bible it talks about this too. When you give things words, it's like you start moving the universe. We're again like the only species that uses words. We label everything as humans, and you literally give life to those thoughts. And that was in that book. He lays out like you do like these 11 things, and by doing these 11 things, you initiate the law of becoming rich. That was his thesis of the book. It was a quick little book, but it was pretty good. But it was just talking about giving it words, right? God said, in the beginning, right? God said this, God said that, God said that. And all those things happen, right? We start giving words of confidence, of healing, of praise, of vision, of destiny, of you give those words, and it happens.
There is a very strong power with the power of words. And fortunately, they can be used for greatness and for very terrible things at the same time. This is the journey and evolution of our lives. And if we conquer the fundamentals of our aspirations, our dreams, they can become a reality. And again, like this is the great examples we've seen. The people who actually achieve great things, they truly shifted the dynamics of the universe with the help of God, with the help of energy, with the help of self belief. But the core of this, right, to stay true to your values, to stay true to your core beliefs. Don't betray yourself or who you truly are, and the magic door is going to open no matter what. And it's interesting, people are sometimes get driven by the very shallow or very surface results. Let's say, hey, I want to sell my business for $1 billion, like this is my ambitious whatever, and very few actually go deeper and ask, like, so why do you need $1 billion? Well, I want to have fame and acknowledgement, I want to be featured on Forbes. So why do you need that? Well, because I want to show that I'm worthy. Okay, so why do you think you need to be feeling worthy? Well, I want to have attract the wealth, that I want to have independence. So it go deeper and deeper and deeper. And ultimately, if you keep on asking those questions to yourself, why you want the certain things, it comes down to your core fundamental values, what it truly matters to you, what it really drives you. And if you go deeper inside, maybe this is a connections with your loved ones. Maybe you always had a dream to spend more time with your family. Maybe you want to give back to your parents that were sacrificing certain things for you for many, many years. Maybe you want to give a brighter future to your children that you haven't had a chance to have yourself. Whatever the core fundamentals, and if you start from there, it actually gives you this power of manifestation. I believe it all starts within the core fundamentals, because if you start manifesting, like, I want to be $1 billion business, so why it's not happening? Because that's not what truly you really want. I think the key aspect here as well is to truly know what drives you. So Vince, what actually drives you? I mean, it's a tricky question. Deep inside.
Really good. That's a really good question. I don't know if I truly, have self actualization or not. I think what I relate to the most in the world, my wife would certainly say this, is that I relate to the world mostly as Victor's dad, and my relationship with my son and my care for my son and the things I do with my son, my engagement with him and community and those kind of things. I think that's kind of, a big part of who I am, and a lot of my time, right? It's a lot of my time. So it's, you know, I don't know how healthy that is long term, but that's kind of what it really is. And when you think about purpose, I talked about purpose and finding God's purpose for you, I could do a lot of good work in what I do. Right? I talk to a lot of people. I have the ability to connect with a lot of people, maybe add a little bit of wisdom along the way to lots of folks that I connect to, and I do like that. But I think I'm more at this. So in the I kind of refer to it as my compass. So in the New Testament, in the Bible, it only shares 4 times where it specifically says, the will of God for you is this. And there's only 4 things, and it's pretty easy to kind of stay there. It's not that complicated, right? So it says the will of God is for you to be thankful in all situations. So to be thankful all the time, right? So the will of God is to acknowledge that God is God and to love God, right? So love God, be thankful. And the will of God is to understand that you're sanctified, which means separate, that you're different than other people who don't believe where you are believe. So okay, so I understand that I'm different. I'm thankful. I believe in God. And then the fourth one is just to do the right thing, do what's right in that situation. And so so if you really can just try to do what inside feels right, I think younger people have it's a little harder unless they're very mature spiritually to have God conversations with. Even with my kids, my kids all believe in God, and I certainly talk to them about God. But most of the time, I talk to them about their challenges in not so much godly ways, but in like situations like, well, like that just search your feelings. Like search your feelings in that situation of what you think would be the right thing to do, and trust that. Just like go with how do you really feel about that? How does that make you feel, right? And just try to get them to start decision making based upon doing the right things. They all don't do that, right? They're have 6 kids. They're like all it's like it's all over the place. But and I don't always do that, right? So I continually trying to get a little bit better, a little bit better.
And it's a never ending story. Many of us lose the connections to our inner voice, whether it's a Holy Spirit, the God voice inside of us, our intuition, whatever you call it. Many of us get so busy, and we live in this high tech environment where we're bombarded with constant messages and constant noise surrounds us, that blocks the actual voice that really meant to guide us towards the right decisions, towards the right choices. I worked with my therapist back in the day, and she told me, my request was like, how do I find my way back to my inner voice? How I start listening to my intuition, to what's right, what's helped me to track within powers within me to help me guide to the right destiny, to the right decision making. And she said to me, like, look, start with the very simple stuff, like a very simple stuff. And she didn't even talk about religion because it was not ready for me at that moment. She's like, look, the simple exercise that you can do, and kids, and you can teach this from an early age. You wake up in the morning and you ask yourself, what do you want for breakfast? Do you want apple or banana? And you have this or inside of it, and just listen to your response, and slowly, gradually, you can even teach this to your kids to really be true, listen to your response within you. And over time, you get better and better and better at this. And it's hard to talk to some of the children that are very far away from spirituality and religion. But I think those small exercises and small things to help them to listen to themselves first will open up the greater doors, greater path to exploration of their own abilities through the greater powers of God, through the greater powers of religion, through the greater powers within themselves, to listen to this or and it helps to make the right decision that is true to yourself. And if you don't betray yourself, you're gaining this amazing energy source that you are willing to give back to your community, back to your family. Because if you force yourself, when your inner voice is like, this is not me, and you force yourself doing it anyways, you're losing so much within yourself. You may not be visible from the inside, from the outside, but from the inside, it eats up your greatest resource for doing greatness in this world.
Yeah.
So it's either apple or banana, or coffee or tea. Talk to
That's
your refrigerator.
because that's very simple, right?
Yeah.
And you just give yourself choices and go with the one that feels good.
Yeah. And then practicing that over and over again, you start noticing your inner responses. Without this, it's almost impossible to break through and understand, like, what is the intuition is for? What is the spiritual voice inside it? What is it? How you touch it, how you tap into it, how you experience this, unless you start doing a micro steps forward. So Vince, your last kind of words of wisdom for the younger generations who are in the early stages of their careers, their path, they're searching their own path, their own ways to express themselves, their own destiny. What would you recommend? I know you've mentioned those 4 Ps, and I love that you shared it from the religion kind of aspect. But there's so many people that are not on a path of religion. How would they go about it, and where they would start
Yeah.
to really see the great?
I would say have a plan, right? Manifest, right? Set goal. It's stuff you've heard, like I heard all my life growing up, right? Like, have a dream board and put the things you want to accomplish or have on a dream board, right? And so you're looking at your goals, or right, or just set a plan, right? Like, if you're young, right? So if you're early in your career, your 20s, you're a business person, maybe you just got your MBA, you're heading into the business world, and you're trying to figure out, okay, what do I do now? And so I would set a plan, and maybe it's a 5-year, 3-year, 1-year plan. 5 years from now, I'd like to be here, right? Which would mean really 3 years from now, I should be at this point, which probably means a year from now, I need to be here, right? And just kind of set that goal, set a plan, set action items, right? SMART goals, right? Specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, time bound, right? So the set real goals with real results, real actions, and work towards that, right? If you're a big dreamer, right, and you're like, I want to run a multi-billion-dollar company, or I want to, become a billionaire, right? Well, I would say a date and time that you'd want to do that by, and then start. I mean, it's just reverse engineering it. And by the way, there's plenty of billionaires out on planet Earth, and all you got to do is look at what they've done, right? Kind of look at their journey. How did they do it? Right?
Reverse engineer, kind of.
Yeah, reverse engineering. You can take the Forbes 100 top 100 richest people in the world. They do that list. That's a real thing, right? Like to take that list of the who Forbes says are the 100 most wealthy people on the earth and reverse engineer how they got there, right? And see if that's something that's important to you. But I would say it's really a goal setting, right? Man, just it doesn't have to be the perfect decision. You can change it, right? Just because you say you want to be here in 5 years, 2 years into it, you can be like, I don't know what I was thinking about 2 years ago. I'm changing that, right? That's okay. But at least you're moving, right? Get it moving. I used to tell a story in business that it's easier to steer a ship when it's moving, right? Because if a ship is kind of floating, you can't get anywhere, right? It's hard to steer. You're just kind of stuck in the current. But if you're moving and you need to change course, you're already moving, so it's easy to change course, right? So just get it moving, get some goals. You can always change them. It's not earth shattering if you change your goals, right? But at least you're working towards goals. That's what I would say.
And the goal without a plan is just a wish. It's never going to move you anywhere. And the energy it's the motion. It's the motion of anything. And it doesn't matter if you make 10 steps a day or one step a day towards your goal. It still creates the momentum of movement and flow within yourself. If you stick one seed and wish for some magical things to happen, it never come to you. And if you don't sure which the final destination is, take the first step and it will start clearer and clearer and clearer as you go through it. All right. Vince, it's been my pleasure. I'm delighted to have the conversation, and you've been a wonderful friend, and you've been my mentor, and you inspired me with your concepts to find my own journey within myself, within my spirituality, and discover things that I probably would never discover if I wouldn't start asking myself the right questions. So
wonderful. I'm so glad. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure.